Hi, this is a video to recap everything I saw on stage in February 2026. We are literally so genuinely back. I started February off pretty strong by finally seeing the revival of Ragtime at Lincoln Center Theater, directed by the new artistic director there, Lear de Bessonet. This is the classic musical by Stephen Flaherty, Lynn Ahrens, and Terrence McNally, based on the 1975 book of the same name. It followed three groups of people in the early 20th century: Black Americans in Harlem, white upper-class Americans in New Rochelle, and Eastern European immigrants in the Lower East Side. They are exemplified by the three leads: Colehouse Walker Jr., played by Joshua Henry, Mother, played by Casey Levy, and Tate, played by Brandon Uranowitz. This revival of Ragtime has been touted as the most important thing to hit Broadway this season. A ragtime for the current moment with incredible music and a timely story. And I would mostly agree with that. I think Ragtime sounds incredible at the Vivian Beaumont. The band is great, and this cast has some of the best voices on Broadway today. Thematically though, Ragtime never truly delivers what it hopes to, in my opinion. And please do not click off just because this is a hot take in the first entry. I just think, for one, the ending kind of sucks, and it is an example of kind of glossing over real issues to deliver a hopeful version of the future that just doesn't exist. And Terrence McNally's book is often way too blunt, relying on huge signposts that signal, hey, this moment is racist, these characters are bad, did you get that? And while I was moved by many moments in Ragtime, I don't think it truly managed to say something profound about the state of America. It's just a little too fragmented and sprawling. A better director could have made more sense of Ragtime, but Lear is just, I don't even want to get too much into it. It's just a simplistic staging that doesn't actually help the musical or resolve any of its contradictions, especially in the set design. By the end of it, I was glad that I was sitting on the side so that I didn't have to fully see the often distracting projections or the giant white comforter that drops from the ceiling for God knows what reason. Anyways, all of this doesn't really matter because the music is so stirring and it's presented by Joshua, Casey, and Brandon, who are delivering just top-of-the-line performances. And Ragtime is still a good time, and I'm probably just being a hater. I followed Ragtime up by catching Oedipus on its final weekend. This is Robert Icke's rendition of the Greek Sophocles tragedy, transferring from London to Studio 54 and starring Mark Strong and Leslie Manville. You probably already know what Oedipus is about, and Icke just updates it to the modern day, where Oedipus is now a politician running for office. In the hours before the votes are tallied, he goes on a quest to discover the true nature of his birth and life. I think I liked Oedipus. The acting is top-notch, and Icke made this Greek tragedy stuff still hit hard today. It is definitely a slow burn though, and I had pretty bad seats, and it was my first time in Studio 54, which was just an unpleasant experience all around. I feel like I kind of don't remember that much about Oedipus, so I guess it didn't stick with me that much, but I unexpectedly really liked Olivia Rice's performance as Antigone, who is Oedipus's daughter. Around the middle of the play, there's a moment where she's standing on a carpet that's being rolled up by some workmen, and I found it very moving in a strange way. She's just a girl whose entire life is changing around her, and she's not sure entirely what to do. Maybe Icke will return with an adaptation of Antigone next, so I guess I'll be looking forward to that. What I remember the most about Oedipus is the ending, which I kind of absolutely hated. Genuinely, I saw the ending and thought, oh my god, I want to do it to my eyes what Oedipus just did to his. Spoiler warning, I guess, even though the play is already closed, but after the curtain falls on Oedipus stabbing his eyes, it rises again to have Leslie Manville and Mark Strong walk back on stage and enact basically their first time in the campaign office. Going back in time to when they were happy and ignorant and in love. I just felt like, if we're gonna do tragedy, have a tragic ending. Don't do this modern contemplative ending that just comes out of nowhere and ruins the mood that you have spent the last 2 hours slowly building. But anyways, Oedipus still felt it was solid. Later that same day, I went to New York City Center to see their Encore's presentation of High Spirits. This is a musical from 1964 written by Hugh Martin and Timothy Gray based on the Noel Coward play Blithe Spirit. For those unaware, Encore's mission is kind of to restage classic musicals with the original orchestrations for limited concert-style runs. High Spirits follows a married couple played by Philippa Sue and Stephen Pasquale, who are actually married in real life, and they invite a medium to a dinner party. The medium, here played by Andrea Martin, accidentally summons the ghost of Stephen Pasquale's first wife, played by Christina Lenk, and then basically chaos and comedy ensue. Recently, Encores has been doing a lot of more popular shows, like Urinetown last year or La Cage aux Folles that's upcoming, so it's nice to see them go back to putting on weird, underseen gems. And I did think that High Spirits was a gem, particularly the jazzy score, which was beautifully played by the Encore's orchestra. I thought that Pippa and Katrina were just fabulous, and Rachel Dratch in a tiny role got big laughs. The highlight of the night was absolutely Eleanor Scott's choreography, which was just delightful. It has so much style, and it builds with the song, and it actually has interest in using dancers' bodies as lines and using formation to tell story. Definitely the best choreography I saw in February. In terms of criticisms, I was a bit underwhelmed by Andrea Martin's performance as this supposedly kooky medium. I think with the short rehearsal time of Encores Andrew decided to get by with mostly just her natural charisma and stage presence, which might have worked in the orchestra, but I don't think it reached anyone sitting in the balcony. And it is true that this was much more concerty than the other shows I've seen at Encores, but honestly, I don't really consider this a huge criticism, just a natural part of the short rehearsal time. With that being said, it did sometimes feel like we were just slogging through some book scenes just to get to the delightful songs, but the songs were honestly just so delightful. I know there are many Encores productions people wish we had a cast recording for, but I honestly wouldn't mind one for this show. The next show I saw was a production of Angels in America Part 1, put on by NYU's graduate acting program. I've always loved NYU grad acting. They generally put on off-Broadway quality shows on campus and for cheaper than off-Broadway. It's exciting seeing the next generation of talent. The two plays I had seen by them before were amazingly acted and designed, but I kind of had issues with how the plays themselves are written. So when they do Angels in America, pretty much uniformly agreed to be one of the best American plays ever written, they finally had a play good enough for their talent. It was pretty incredible. Actors at the top of their game, great lighting, and a simple yet very effective set design littered with feathers. I want to give a huge shout out to Alexander Steele Zonjic, who played Roy Cohen. Yes, the Your Honor, who cares guy. But he was genuinely transformative. His coughing was so realistic, I thought he was literally about to keel over on that stage in front of us. But the defining image I had from this production was that of Kendra Jane's performance as Harper Pitt, coming on stage clutching a single bedroom lamp like an anchor against the tides of life and her own delusions. It was an absolutely beautiful show. I'm so glad I went, and kind of hoping they do part 2 next year. Another student production is next, this one of Rent by NYU Steinhardt's vocal performance program. Unfortunately, not much to say about this one. To be honest, it's Rent. You probably already have strong feelings about this show. I've honestly never really been attached to Rent, but the musical has its moments, and in this production, surprisingly, my favorite part was Over the Moon. The entire audience was actually mooing. It felt strangely cathartic and communal to hear all those moos. Steinhardt's productions are always well sung, but this production was just kind of poorly balanced audio-wise. I seriously could not pick up on a single vocal line once more than like 3 people were singing, and also plagued by a strange directorial concept. But at the end of the day, it was honestly just Rent. Next up is Chinese Republicans, a new play by Alex Lin and directed by Che Yu at Roundabout Theater's off-Broadway space. The play follows 4 high-powered Chinese businesswomen who meet for lunches to discuss their latest triumphs. The youngest of the group, Katie, who's played by Anna Zavelson, is on a fast upward track in the company, but she's kind of being led in different directions by the other women with more experience, played by Jennifer Akeda, Jodie Long, and Julie Lee. Now, I saw Chinese Republicans in its second week of previews, so I don't really want to nitpick or discuss it in too much depth, but I will say that the play has a pretty big issue in my opinion, which is that the main plot point / reveal / conflict has nothing to do with the women being either Chinese or Republicans. I would honestly say that there are maybe like 10 lines even discussing these women's politics. But anyways, there's good acting going on here. I really like Julie Lee's performance as Iris, but I think the play needed another pass through with more substantial tweaks than those that will come during previews. On Sunday, me and my friends woke up early and got rush seats to Chess. This is, of course, the rock musical with music and lyrics by Benny and Bjorn of ABBA and Tim Rice, and a book by Rice that's given a new version here by Danny Strong. Although the title is Chess, the show is really about this strange love triangle between 2 chess champions. Aaron Tveit plays the American Freddie, and Nicholas Christopher plays the Russian Anatoly, and Florence, who starts as Freddie's girlfriend and his chess strategist. Chess is directed by Michael Mayer in a semi-concert staging. I was never one of those people that was so attached to the original albums of Chess. It just came into my life a bit late. I went into Chess liking the songs Nobody's Side and I Know Him So Well, mostly because I like Judy Kuhn, but I wasn't an expert on the vast changes this musical has gone through. And walking out, there was one thing that was definitely clear: Danny Strong did not fix Chess. This book is a mess. Mostly because of the character of the Arbiter, who's made into this omniscient narrator with terrible, terrible jokes. Like jokes referencing Joe Biden and RFK Jr.'s brainworm. I mean, just to be clear, I had an understudy for the Arbiter, so I can't really speak on performance, but the writing is just terrible. I seriously cannot believe they gave this character these lines to say on a Broadway stage. And he constantly undermines the only way chess could possibly work, which is by committing to being a strange tale of love amidst chess and the Cold War. The Arbiter is always like, wow, look how crazy everything is, and next up in our Cold War musical, oh my god, he said the phrase Cold War musical so many times, and it's just bad. It's bad. Anyways, Chess is still pretty fun sometimes. Nick Christopher's voice is incredible, but I low-key think Anatoly as a character is just really boring. Leah Michelle actually cannot act in this role to save her life, I'm so sorry. But Aaron Tveit actually really impressed me. I think he probably sounds the worst of the trio, but his acting is great and he has a lot of swag. My MVPs were him and honestly Hannah Cruz, who plays Svetlana, who has a great voice and can actually make her performance work with the insanity of Chess. Overall, this production of Chess is not the one to save Chess. The Monsters is a new play written and directed by Ngozi Anyanwu at one of Manhattan Theater Club's spaces in the basement of New York City Center. The Monsters follows two half-siblings, Big, played by Akinete Onadawan, and Lil, played by Agner Mazel. At the top of the play, Big is a local boxing champion, and Lil visits him after like 15 years of not seeing each other. Eventually, Big agrees to train Lil to become a boxer, while she is also dealing with her own addictions to alcohol. The play also flashes back to the two siblings' past, revealing their years of abuse by their dad and other aspects of their generally troubled childhoods. The Monsters gets a lot of punch as a play from its two leads. Agner and Oak are genuinely chameleonic as they go back and forth playing their teenage and adult selves. It's also a very physical play. There are long sequences of boxing and workouts that were just kinetic to watch. The two leads bring a lot of physicality to their roles. Oak has this one moment where he mimics his sister's weak punches, which was hilarious. Agner has an almost clown-like aspect to her acting. At one point, Big throws a bag at Lil, and it's meant to like knock her over, and I was so impressed by how naturally and funnily Agner was able to make that action. I do think that there kind of wasn't enough there for an hour and 40-minute runtime, and that some of Ngozi's music-heavy transitions brought in unnecessary breaks in action. The penultimate scene's flood of emotion kind of came out of nowhere for me, and the final scene's denouement went on for way too long. It's a solid play that works best as a beautifully acted character drama of two souls lost in addiction, but aside from a few fight scenes, I didn't walk out truly feeling I had seen something new and exciting. Also, the theater was so hot, we were genuinely being cooked in there. By the end of it, I was sweating and longing for the cold winds of the streets of New York City. Next up is Ulysses, created by Elevator Repair Service and performed at the Public Theater in their Martinson space. You might have heard of Elevator Repair Service from Gats, which was an 8-hour-long marathon in which an ensemble read/acted the entire text of F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. They're doing something similar here with James Joyce's Ulysses, but this time they have to skip over large segments or else we would genuinely be at the public for like over 24 hours. I'm not going to try and recap Ulysses because I kind of had no idea what was going on for a lot of the play. I'm a complete newcomer to James Joyce and modernism in literature in general, so it makes sense I was confused, to be honest. I found that I could kind of follow the first act, but then the second act completely lost me. I saw Gats last year and absolutely loved it, and it felt to me that Elevator Repair Service was able to kind of reintroduce me to Fitzgerald's text and highlight it in a completely new way. Maybe it's because I haven't read Ulysses before, but they honestly did not convince me of the original text's brilliance this time around. Great cast and great design though, and probably includes the best male birthing scene I've ever seen. So take that as what you will. I next saw Lauren Yee's new play Mother Russia at Signature Theater, directed by Teddy Bergman. And I'm gonna say almost nothing about it in this video because I published a review of it and I'll take any opportunity possible to plug my writing. Go check it out on nyunews.com or linked in the description. The only thing I will say is that I think Rebecca Naomi Jones has one of the most expressive faces on New York stages today, with these huge eyes that telegraph so much without any dialogue. But anyways, go read my piece. I braved the second winter storm on Sunday to see Hate Radio at St. Anne's Warehouse in Brooklyn. Hate Radio is written and directed by Milo Rao, who is a Swiss theater maker who's become known for theater of the real, or like theater verite, I guess, where he documents real events on stage. Hate Radio focuses on the Radio Television Libre de Mille Collines, or RTLM, which was a main proponent of the Rwandan genocide in 1994. The hosts on the radio, in between dancing to their songs, would call for violence against the Tutsi minority, degrade them as cockroaches, rewrite history to fit their genocidal fantasy, and generally incited hundreds of thousands of killings. Hate Radio recreates a bit over an hour of one of these broadcasts, and the dialogue is sent into headphones that all audience members have to wear. I have to admit that I was not a huge fan of Hate Radio, and I want to say that I understand the importance of restaging this for the modern day. But a lot of my issues come with the execution, not necessarily the concept. The concept is good, and there have been so many other incredible examples of this documentary theater style, like think of The Laramie Project or Twilight Los Angeles 1992. But first off, the headphones in Hate Radio are just kind of unnecessary. Especially at the start and the end, Milo bookends the show with these projected quote-unquote witness testimony, which is just like film documentary confessionals. But these aren't even real victims or people, they're also actors with a script, and Milo assembled their stories from multiple different sources. It's unnecessary and it takes way too long because we're just watching grainy projections of people slowly give history lessons that are kind of like a little made up. It's like those dark corners in a museum that are endlessly looping some boring video that you kind of half watch a minute of before moving on. And we have to listen to them through our uncomfortable headphones before the actual radio begins. And yes, it is chilling to hear the way that the radio presenters denigrated Tutsis and incited violence, but Hate Radio is just not a dramatic work. It's fly on the wall to the nth degree with little build or climax or anything. Since the work isn't spoken in English, most audiences will be constantly looking at the subtitles, which by the way didn't really work that well all the times, and because it's staged in the Traverse with little movement, people couldn't see everyone's faces anyways. It feels like this theater style was the worst possible to actually get these ideas out there, and it just felt like 2 hours of being told to take your medicine, learn about these terrible events, without actually packaging it in a way that will get into audiences' minds and hearts. But honestly, regardless of all this, I'm glad new theater like this is being made and shown to audiences, even if my ears had to pay the price for it. But all in all, not worth going to Brooklyn during a literal blizzard for. The second to last show of February was Nightside Songs, a new musical by folk songwriting duo The Lazzers at Lincoln Center's Claire Toe Theater, which I had never been to before and is actually pretty snazzy. To get it out of the way, yes, Nightside Songs is a sing-along experience. Before the show began, the cast all came out and passed out these songbooks to the audience members, which means Mary Testa was like 5 feet away from me, and I was honestly too stunned to speak. But anyways, you were encouraged to sing during 8 of the 12 songs. The plot follows this woman named Yasmin, who is diagnosed with cancer. It overall explores the power of communal music making in response to illness. Nightside Songs actually reminded me a lot of the play Every Brilliant Thing, which I saw in London and is now on Broadway with Daniel Radcliffe, in that they both attempt to tackle big issues with a focus on audience interaction and communal healing. Nightside Songs actually made me appreciate Every Brilliant Thing a lot more because it made me realize that it's hard to write narration. It's hard to write something where characters are constantly talking to the audience and chiming in. And in the case of Nightside Songs, I think the constant narration interruptions did unfortunately hinder the plot and make it harder to feel an emotional connection to Yasmin. And I think Nightside Songs could have honestly leaned more into its documentary theater lens. The Lazzers wrote the show after talking to a bunch of people in the healthcare system, and the one time where they drew on a specific person's words I found really effective. Where Nightside Songs really gets its strength is in its cast. Brooke Ishibashi is incredible as Yasmin, providing a lot of character and charm to what could have just been a generic everyman. The other cast of 4, Jonathan Raviv, Mary Testa, Robin DeJesus, and Chris St. Louis, are also really great and each get moments to shine in their own solo songs. The one time I felt that singing along truly worked with the plot, instead of just kind of being something we had to do, was in the last song. I don't really want to spoil it because this was a terrific moment and honestly one of the best of the whole month. And honestly, Nightside Songs is probably worth seeing half because of this moment. I kind of only saw this show because it was one of the few truly original new musicals that was going to be playing this spring, and while it didn't bowl me over, I left appreciative and glad to have seen it. On the last day of February, I saw NYU Tish's production of Eugene Ionesco's Rhinocerous. I'm just going to briefly summarize. Rhino is basically an absurd play that's a metaphor for fascism and Nazism. Basically, residents of a small town in the play start slowly turning into rhinos. The first time a rhino is spotted, the people are alarmed, but focus more on categorizing the rhino as having 1 horn or 2, or debating logical fallacies. By the end, where more people start becoming rhinos, people start justifying it. Turning into a rhino is actually perfectly natural and encouraged. So basically, the rhinos are fascists, and the play explores how fascism gets into the minds of even the most logical among us. And this all sounds cool and timely, but the issue I had is that the play is just so blunt in its messaging. The entire second act is just people slowly turning into rhinos and being like, rhinos are actually cool, guys, and I feel like I understood the point after like 10 minutes of this. It's one of those plays where you feel like it's meant to be analyzed in a literature class, where each character is representative of some ideology, but they're not real people, and this isn't a real story. It's a fable put on stage. So I honestly have no issues with any of the people on stage or behind the scenes, but I feel like French absurdism might just not be for me. And that was February. I'm so glad to finally be uploading again, and sorry for the terrible upload schedule so far. Sorry also for the terrible audio quality per usual. Sorry for everything. Anyways, subscribe to be notified when my March recap drops, leave a comment if you saw any of these shows, and see you guys next time. Bye!